Ohio State returns 0 All-Americans next year, but are they still in contention for a national title? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name is Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling, where we do wrestling lineup previews every single Thursday. So make sure you hit that subscribe button below so you can be updated on the latest in wrestling news. Now, this week we're talking about Ohio State and their lineup preview for the 2021 season. The 2020-2021 season, how is Ohio State going to do? Now, the team is bringing on a great number of guys. They were the #1 recruiting class in 2019, but they are losing quite a few guys as well, which is unfortunate for the squad. Of course, two of those guys that they're losing are Luke Pletcher as well as Kollin Moore, and they're also losing Keyshawn Hayes. Big losses for the team. And as I said, that means they're returning 0 All-Americans. Now, of course, that is a little bit of a misconception because there weren't any national championships this year. So whereas Ohio State could have had a couple of All-Americans, they weren't able to get them this year. But who does the team have this year, and are they going to be any good? Let's get right into it. So at 125 pounds, there are a couple of tough guys that Ohio State has. A couple of guys who are looking for that spot. Top of that lineup, of course, is Malik Heinzelman. Malik Heinzelman is a junior, was 18-15 last year, and he was a national qualifier. Now, a couple of these other guys, you have the Coons brothers, as well as Jacob Decatur, who is, of course, the brother of Jordan Decatur, who is at 133 pounds. Now, Jacob Decatur himself placed at a couple of opens last year, is a multiple-time Ohio State champion in Division II, and he's also an Ironman champion, which I found very impressive. Now, as far as, how these guys are going to stack up next year, Malik Heinzelman's probably going to get that starting spot again at 125 pounds, and this is a weight that's got to keep strong for Ohio State. As far as the Big Ten, Big Ten is stacked in 125 pounds, and Ohio State can't be slacking there. Now, we move on to 133 pounds. We look at Jordan Decatur and Nick Oldham. I already mentioned Jordan Decatur, brother of Jacob Decatur, but Jordan, unfortunately, last year, he did not qualify for the national tournament. He kind of had a tough dual meet season, but 133 pounds was tough. With Alvarez, Seth Gross, Austin DeSanto, it was just a loaded weight, and it's not going to get any less loaded this year. So Jordan Decatur or Nick Oldham is going to have to stay up. Now, Nick Oldham, he wrestled a couple opens last year. He was an Iowa State champion, actually, and a 3-time Iowa State finalist. So as far as these two go, who's going to end up making the lineup at 133 is probably going to be Jordan Decatur again, the sophomore. 14-10 last year. Hopefully he trains in the offseason, steps it up a little bit, and I think he will. Ohio State always has a solid lightweight guys. So moving on to 141 pounds, who do we have at 141 for Ohio State? We have Dylan D'Amelio, Anthony Etchemendia, as well as Quinn Kinner. Now, this is a stacked weight for Ohio State. This is just it's all jammed up, really, from 141 to 165, really. It's all jammed up with guys with who's going to go where. Now, first of all, Dylan D'Amelio, the redshirt freshman, was 6-2 last year. He's the number 32 overall recruit in 2019, a 4-time state champion out of Ohio. He's a Fargo champ and a multiple-time finalist, and a Cadet Pan Am's silver medalist. This is going to be a big weight to fill, 141, because that's where Luke Pletcher was last year. So can Dylan D'Amelio or somebody else fill in here? Now, the other question that a lot of people have is where is Anthony Etchemendia going to fall into the lineup? Etchemendia, if you're not sure who he is, I actually made a whole video about his backstory because he's big on the coming into the college wrestling scene this year. Etchemendia is a 6-time Cuban national champion. Growing up, he moved to the U.S. in 2018, ended up winning an Arizona State title, won Fargo in the freestyle and Greco-Roman divisions, and it's just very, very solid. The other guy you have here is Quinn Kinner. I'll touch on him in just a bit because I don't think he's going to end up going 141. I think he's actually going to bump up to 157. So who's going to get the starting spot here? That's the question. Dylan D'Amelio, I think, has a better shot than Anthony Etchemendia, and here's why. And this may be very controversial. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Etchemendia is a solid wrestler. We've seen that. We've seen him win big tournaments and do very well, but most of those tournaments are freestyle. We don't we aren't really too sure how he's going to fit into the folk style in the U.S. And we've seen international wrestlers struggle before moving from freestyle to folk style. It's a tough style to learn and transitioning from freestyle to folk style. And that's why I don't know for certain, how this is going to pan out. I may be proven totally wrong, but I think D'Amelio here is proven in folk style. I think he may get the starting spot at 141. Obviously, the wrestle-off will tell, and Tom Ryan will end up making the ultimate decision. That's just my 2 cents on the whole matter there. And then we're going to move on to the next weight at 149 pounds. And yes, this is really Sammy Sasso's weight. Sammy Sasso, JD Stickley, and Clay Reeves are all competing for a spot here at 149 pounds. But Sammy Sasso, Big Ten runner-up last year. What a phenomenal breakout season that the freshman had. 24-3 last year with just a couple of losses, avenged a couple of those losses, but will be a sophomore next year. He was a real threat for a national title last year. I think that's going to be no different this year. He was a Cliff Keen runner-up, like I said, Big Ten runner-up, and, beating great guys like Pat Lugo, Brayton Lee, Maruka, Jarrett Deegan, Kanan Storr, and of course he has a prestigious Ohio State black shirt, which is a great award given out, or great black shirt given out to Ohio State wrestlers who are just the epitome of a tough warrior in the room. And Sammy Sasso is one of those guys, and it's probably going to be, in my opinion, he's probably going to end up being a captain of the team next year, but that's yet to be seen. JD Stickley and Clay Reeves, on the other hand, the 2 backups here at 149. Stickley was injured last year, placed in a couple of opens, but was mostly injured for the year. And Clay Reeves, who's listed at 149, is a 4-time state placer. He's a redshirt freshman, will be solid in the backup coming into the future. Now, moving on to 157 pounds, because, it's going to be tough with Sammy Sasso at 149. Who's going to be there? We have guys moving up, moving down the lineup. It's a tough jammed up spot for the Buckeyes. But at 157, this is another loaded weight, because you have Sammy Sasso there, who quite possibly none of these other guys can beat him out for a spot, which makes sense. You have Quinn Kinner, Elijah Cleary, Trey Grenier, Anthony Echemendia, who may bump up to 157. You could see that. Bryce Hepner, Chris Ketchum, no relation to Ash Ketchum, coincidentally. So, first of all, a couple of these guys that you have here. You have Elijah Cleary, who was the starter last year. Cleary last year did not qualify for the national tournament, but he did win a couple of opens. He had solid wins over Jacob Tucker, over Quinn Kinner, who is the other wrestler competing for a spot here, actually in an open tournament, as well as Eric Brown of Illinois. Some solid wins for Cleary. He will be a senior this year. But then as far as Quinn Kinner, he is a sophomore. Last year he was 22-8, wrestled off Pletcher at 141 pounds, and actually started the season at 133 pounds and ended up the season at 157 pounds. So he bumped all around from 133 to 141 to 157, and that's why I have him here at 157 pounds. Now at 157, he had an impressive victory by defeating Brady Berge of Penn State. Now Berge, may have been injured. He was injured at the time, but you can't necessarily give all those excuses. It was an impressive victory by Quinn Kinner. Now, like I said, he did lose to Cleary at the Madtown Open, but as far as prowess, as far as the styles go, I think that Quinn Kinner is probably going to get the starting spot here. A wrestle-off could decide that, but, with guys that wrestle off in the room every single day, you're going to get a little bit closer to the results, and that makes sense. So I think Kinner's going to get that spot at 157. So now we move on to 165 pounds, and at 165, it's another, tough weight, tough call with who we have. Ethan Smith, Carson Karchula, the redshirt freshman, Jayshon Hubbard, the junior, transferring out of Notre Dame. Actually, was enrolled in the spring semester here. Was a 4-time Ohio State placer. That's Jayshon Hubbard. We also have Kevin Freeman, Cade Hepner, Isaac Wilcox, another loaded weight. Now, of course, last year, Ethan Smith was the starter at 165 pounds. But who is going to end up being the starter here next year? Is it going to be Karchula? Is it going to be Ethan Smith? I think that Ethan Smith, who is a 2-time national qualifier, was actually the 12 seed going into the national tournament, was a tough guy, could have potentially All-American in my opinion, placed 4th at the Big Ten, was really coming into his zone at the end of the 2020 season. Huge win over David McFadden early on in the year. I mean, what a solid wrestler. I think he's going to end up getting the spot just because I think Carcella is going to end up bumping up to 174 because that's where he's actually listed in the lineup. So we look now at 174. You know, like I said, some guys are listed in the lineup on Ohio State's website, on the roster. I'll have that link down in the description so you can check it out yourself. And those are always going to change, you know, those weights. Just because it's listed on the website that way doesn't necessarily mean that's where these guys end up. But this is the best that we can do to predict where Ohio State's lineup is going to be. Now we move on to 174 with Caleb Romero, Carson Carcella, and Fritz Shield. So Caleb Romero was the guy last year. What a solid season that the then sophomore had. Of course, coming into this year, he will be a junior. Was 19-7 last year. Caleb Romero was a national qualifier and the 6th seed coming into national. So another guy who could have All-American for the Buckeyes. He placed 4th at Big Tens with his best win over Skatka. And he was another black shirt for Ohio State last year in the room. He had big wins over Anthony Valencia with a couple of losses to Mark Hall, Michael Kemmer, and Dylan Leidy. So that, of course, is Caleb Romero. But then you also have here Carson Carcella. Carson Carcella is a redshirt freshman coming in undefeated last year. Won 4 open tournaments, including the Michigan State Open, the Ohio Intercollegiate Open, the Storm, and the Purple Raider. All tournaments that Carson Carcella won. He defeated Ethan Smith last year, actually, in a wrestle-off, in Ohio State's wrestle-off, which is kind of interesting. You know, you see these guys bumping all up over the place. You don't know exactly where they're going to line up, and, you know, so far off now that anything could change. But he defeated Smith in wrestle-off last year. Now, Carcella was the number 4 recruit in 2019, a 2-time state champ out of Ohio, an Ironman champ. He won his match at Who's Number 1 against a top recruit in Julian Ramirez, and he's also a junior freestyle and Fargo champion. So Carson Carcella is a tough guy for Ohio State to have at 174 pounds. But I think what's going to happen here, although he did redshirt last year, I think you're going to see Caleb Romero actually end up taking the starting spot here again at 174 pounds. We've yet to see what these two face off against each other, how that could end up. You could see Carcella bumping down to 165 again. Like I said, I have him here just because that's kind of where he's listed on the website. And that's where he's listed right now, but you could see that absolutely changing. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to 184 pounds. And 184 pounds is probably a familiar name if you're an Ohio State fan, in Rocky Jordan. Of course, his other brothers, the Jordan brothers, Micah and Bo Jordan. Then you have Zach Steiner. Zach Steiner now, he was injured last year. He was actually an Ohio State champion in D2, and he placed at a couple of opens last season. Now, Rocky Jordan, on the other hand, what's the deal with Rocky Jordan? He had a solid year. You know, 184, in my opinion, was an extremely tough weight. From Big 10s to Big 12s to ACCs especially, 184 is just absolutely wild. But he had a 29-9 record. It was a sophomore. He will be a sophomore coming into this season, was a freshman last year with a 29-9 record. Very impressive. He defeated Romero at 174 in a wrestle-off last year, but, you know, a lot of these times we'll see things changing for the team, and this may be a best-case scenario for the team, and that's why he's bumping up to 184, but you could see a change there. Rocky Jordan placed 5th at the Big Ten's tournament, was a number 14 seed coming into nationals, had 4 open tournament championships under his belt. It was 5-4 in Big Ten duels. I think he's going to do very well for Ohio State in the future, considering he is such a young guy and is now going to have so many tough guys in the room to train with. But so I think he's going to, you know, get the starting spot again at 184. But at 197, who do we have? Chase Singletary, Tyler Stein, and Gavin Hoffman. Now, Gavin Hoffman can go anywhere, first of all, from 184 all the way up to 285. We've seen that happen last year, where he would wrestle 184 at the beginning of the season, bumped up to 285, so he can be all over the place. Hoffman, as a sophomore, 26-10. He does not have an available redshirt year because he already took it. He had 5 tournament wins last year, started in a few duels, wrestled in the Cliff Key in Las Vegas for Ohio State. Now, you know, this was a tough year for Ohio State last year with Singletary out at 285, so they were trying to find, you know, is Gary Traub going to start? Is Gavin Hoffman going to start? Now, Hoffman in the past, you know, just tell you some of his high school accomplishments. He's a 3-time Pennsylvania state champion, a flow national champion, and he's a cadet world bronze medalist. So, I mean, very, very impressive resume for Gavin Hoffman. Now, he could be anywhere from, like I said, 84 to heavyweight. As far as Tyler Stein, he won a couple of opens himself, was 6-8 last year, a 2-time Ohio State champion and an Ironman placer. And then, of course, the other guy you have in the lineup here is you have Chase Singletary. Now, Chase Singletary is a tough guy at 197. Apparently, he is going to be dropping from 285 down to 197. Last year, he was injured, unfortunately, although it was great for Gary Traub to step up and really take his place there. Last year, he was undefeated at 3-0 in his time of injury. He is a junior going into this season, and he's a former national qualifier, which I think is important to note because, you know, having all these national qualifiers come back is helpful for Ohio State. Made the round of 16. Now, like I said, he can be listed as a 97-pounder or a heavyweight. We'll see exactly where he goes and what exactly happens there. But I think that Chase Singletary is probably going to get the starting spot at 197. You could see Hoffman slide in there, but probably going to be Singletary. Now, as far as 285 pounds, and then I'll tell you exactly how I think Ohio State's going to do coming into next season as far as duels, as far as, you know, a couple of these guys, what's going to happen there. But first is heavyweight. Heavyweight, we have Tate Orndorff, who's transferring out of Utah Valley into Ohio State. Then we have Gary Traub, and again, Gavin Hoffman is potential to start at 285 pounds. But as far as Tate Orndorff and Gary Traub, this would be an interesting little mix-up here because Gary Traub was the starter last year once Singletary was out. A solid resume, 23-9, a solid backup was Traub. He's a national qualifier, number 19 seed coming into the tournament as a quote-unquote backup. So, I mean, what an impressive resume for Gary Traub. Was 5-4 in Big Ten duels, placed 6th at the Big Ten Wrestling Championships, won a couple of opens, and had big wins over Seth Nevels as far as from Penn State and Thomas Pinola of Purdue. Solid victories. Now, the other guy that I already mentioned here that you have is Tate Orndorff. Orndorff, coming out of Utah Valley as a junior, was 18-4 last year, a national qualifier in the Big 12 championships, and a number 8 seed. So technically, he was above Gary Traub. Now, as far as these two go, who's probably going to get the starting spot here? I have to give it to Tate Orndorff just because of a couple of the wins that he has over Gary Traub, and that's really the main reason that I'm giving it to him over him. But you could see Orndorff come in here and Traub beat him out, or Hoffman beat him out, or maybe Singletary comes back up. It's really jammed up all around Ohio State, which is, you know, it's a good problem to have, all these guys on the bench and competing. Tough room. So as far as Ohio State and how they're going to do this season, I think they have a chance for a few All-Americans. You know, coming in, returning 0 All-Americans, I think they really have a shot to have a few and potentially a national champion or two. They're All-Americans, you know, down below. Dylan D'Amelio, a tough guy, like I said, at 141, or Anthony Etchemendia, depending on how he does, if he's going to start or not. You have Ethan Smith, Caleb Romero, Rocky Jordan, who I think can have a breakout in a solid year this year. Chase Singletary and Orndorff or Traub, I think any of those guys could definitely All-American. And then, no, I'm not forgetting about Sammy Sasso. I think Sammy Sasso is another threat again to win the national championships at 149 pounds. Please let me know what you think. And if you're interested in more wrestling lineup previews, make sure you check out this video. I do new wrestling lineup previews every single Thursday in the off season.